Good morning, everyone. This is a very engaging and this topic is close to my heart regarding sector we are tracking very closely. So we all are, I think, cognizant to the fact that there is a strong push towards the infrastructure sector by the government. We are seeing it in across all the sectors. And one of the very interesting thing that what we are looking at in the current last 1 to 2 years is post-COVID, is that not only one sector is driving the growth, be it roads, be it railways, be it ports, urban infrastructure, and now what we have seen is that the water and sewage treatment is also driving. And let me tell you, none of this sector can work without construction equipment. So we are seeing a very, very strong demand momentum for this construction equipment, but there is a long way to go. I have some statistics around here. When we say that India is currently the third largest market in terms of country globally, but we have around 6%, I'm talking about in terms of volume. And the top two, which is China and US, account for almost half. So there is a long way to go. So I will start my first question, Mr. Narayan here. Sir, we are talking about very strong growth. How do you see this industry going forward, and what will be the key growth drivers that you see that will be driving this momentum in the next, not only about 1 year, pre-election, even the post-election also, how you see this industry next 2 to 3 years down the line?
Thank you, Ashish. So I think in terms of growth drivers, I think the government has, over the last 5 years or so, put together a robust, infrastructure around the whole thing. I think we have the national infrastructure pipeline. We also have the Gati Shakti project, which is actually bringing a lot of these departments together. We have roads which have accelerated in terms of execution and growth over the last 5 years or so, at least at a rate of about 10% or so. However, there are multiple other sectors that are yet to catch up in terms of growth where the opportunity still exists. For example, while railways, we've seen a lot of investment on the metro side, there is still opportunity on electrification. There's opportunity on increasing the rail laying in the country. We also expect that ports should accelerate. And a couple of areas where we have seen good momentum include Jal Jeevan Mission, getting water everywhere. Two places where there is still additional opportunity for growth include Swachh Bharat Mission, where we've seen a lot of investment, but we've actually not seen that living up to the potential that's available in the market. And we've also seen that the Smart City project is another major mission that the government has talked about over the last 5 years or so, where there's still a long ways to go. So we hope that the next, once the re-election is, or the new government comes in, there's a lot of focus on the same. At the same time, like we were actually talking about, there's a lot of innovation happening in the market. We are seeing that the OEMs are investing a lot more in technology. We are seeing that machines are becoming more specialized in terms of the work that they are actually doing, which should continue to drive growth. And overall, I think we are in a good place to see a strong growth over the next 3 years or so.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan. So my next question is Mr. Shekhar here. So when you're talking about growth, Mr. Narayan touched regarding the roads, railways, there is a growth driver. When talk about the material handling, Terex being one of the largest player in India, and there is a lot of push towards Swachh Bharat mission where these machines, material handling, the scrappage which is getting, the deployment of machine is getting used again and again. At one point of time when we're talking about 2 to 3 years, or maybe around 10 years back, there is a lot of labor-intensive focus was there. Now a lot of things are getting mechanized. So how do you see this industry? Because there is a lot of traction when we are talking to the various industry participants, we are seeing a lot of traction over there. So what is your thoughts on it? Especially what will drive in the material processing segment going forward, the next 2 to 3 years?
I mean, obviously, the materials processing sector is the core of any of the road construction, highway projects, because you need stones. You need stones to start any project, whether it's buildings, roads, railways, ports, anywhere. But what we are seeing right now, there's a trend coming up that these machines are now also being utilized, repurposed for other opportunities. And one of them, the big ones, is basically in the part of the Swachh Bharat initiative, the handling of the demolition waste, right? So you must have seen all these projects There was the twin towers which were brought down in Noida, Greater Noida last year. So there's a lot of construction and demolition waste which was generated. So there are machines which are now basically working on that part, and that's kind of creating a kind of a greener aggregate, right? So rather than you going and quarrying fresh material from the ground, you can use the construction and demolition waste. Another place wherein, there's a big demand is the municipal solid waste. So any city, any town that you pass through, you will have probably a big mountain of waste which has been dumped there for 50 years, 60 years, and there has been no movement. I mean, Ghazipur dump site is a very good example. There have been examples of, dump sites being put on fire in near Mumbai. So in those areas, these construction equipment machines are being repurposed, not only from Terex, but various other manufacturers as well, to basically separate out the municipal solid waste, which has been lying there for like decades. And what you get out of those is basically, useful material. So you get the RDF, which is a refuse derived fuel, which is all the plastics and anything which is combustible in that waste, and that's being used into the cement plants. The government has mandated, if I'm not wrong, from the last, around 50% of the power or energy to be generated in the cement plants to come from the RDF, right? So that's another way of the kind of, so in a way it's linked to the Swachh Bharat initiative, but it's also kind of the carbon zero, net zero kind of initiative. Then you get soil, right? So a very good example is there was a dump site near Ludhiana, and the soil which has been cleaned out from that dump site is now being used into the highway project, Ludhiana Roopnagar highway project. So rather than excavating new, soil from the ground, right, and depleting the reserves, you are actually using what has been dumped for years, right, So the multiple ways wherein it's being worked out, produced aggregate, which is like the construction and demolition waste, soil, right, RDF, right, these are all being used, and all these material processing machines which are being repurposed, which are also being used in the same road construction, the same machines are being repurposed to a certain extent in that green initiative, and the net zero initiative.
So just specifically to this growth, when we're talking about, so what kind of growth when we're looking at in the mineral processing, in the Swachh Bharat, what kind of, is it possible to quantify or give a market size for this?
So, I mean, what we are seeing that industry has been growing for the last multiple years at around 10 to 12% CAGR, right? And that is going to be very stable growth, right? Because especially when you talk about the materials processing industry, it caters to multiple businesses. So it's also into aggregates, the construction side, but it also has a bit of an overlap with the mining, right? Well, mining is a little bit cyclic industry, right? Coal, iron ore, it has been a bit of cyclic. But construction has been stable for the last 10, 12 years' time. So in years wherein there's also mining happening, picking up, you can see the growth going up to high teens, right? But 10 to 12% is the CAGR growth which we have seen consistently, and I think that's going to be the same case over the next 7 to 8 years' time easily.
Great. Now my next thing is Mr. Agnihotri. I think my two other gentlemen have a very strong expert to the road segment. When we are talking about excavators here, Mr. Agnihotri, we have seen a demand getting shift because of change in emission norms over here from backhoe loader to excavators over here. And then we are talking about a very, very strong impetus on the government, be it on the irrigation side, be it on the road development, where your excavators are used extensively, and Hyundai is known for the excavators. So my question to you is, what kind of growth, again, when talking about in terms of if you want to quantify in the next 2 to 3 years, what kind of growth we are going to see in this industry, in the construction equipment industry overall and for the excavators? And again, specifically if you're talking about excavators, within the excavators, what is driving the growth? Are you seeing any shift from towards the mini excavators to the higher category excavators? What kind of growth you are going to see in the next 2 to 3 years? And is there any change in industry shift or pattern over there?
So good morning. Good question, Ashish. Road has been driving our industry. This has been like maybe, if I tell from our perspective, excavator manufacturer, maybe more around 35-40% excavators are being used, something related to roads or related activities. There has been, actually, India has been basically a 20-ton class, 65 to 70% is 20-ton class excavators we are selling in India. Now, because of all the mechanization and time-bound projects, there is a little shift maybe to use little large class excavators, maybe 35 ton, 30 ton in roads. And on the smaller side, if you look at maybe because of mechanization and education level going up and scarcity of unskilled laborers, so and maybe the projects kind of projects we have space constraints or speed of projects. So you have a lot of mini excavators growing. So mini excavator growth actually is more than the other excavator growth. So in India, if you look at, if I consider maybe the growth of excavators could be around 15-20% in last 2 years, mini excavator has grown by 25-30%. So that could be one shift. Maybe going forward, you will see a lot of, and that's actually a sign of maturity. If you look at developed economies, you will find mini excavators, large excavators. There is a balanced kind of portfolio. Where in India, as of now, it's around 65-70% is 20 ton. So it has to come. The trend, the changing trend, will have to ultimately come to India also. With regards to growth, I think government has done very good actually job by putting up this NIP and creating some kind of 5-year plan, giving good critical projects. So this is giving a lot of confidence to manufacturers like us, and we have very high hopes and ambitions for the India, and we consider this is the right time and this is the right market to invest in. And the companies are investing into the R&D, the innovation, maybe bringing some new products. So we are actually excited about the time today. And we maybe since election has always been a little cyclic kind of demand, but we see that, okay, maybe 2024, 25 could be a little low on the growth, but then overall, as Mr. Jaideep says, 12 to 14%. Industry has set up a target for itself. We are targeting around maybe reaching around from current level of around $8 billion industry to $25 billion by 2030. So that is the kind of, the industry has set up the target for itself, by by creating a vision document for the industry. So we are very excited, and we are all seeing that we are in the right place at the right time, and growth is bound to happen here.
Now, when I touched on the excavator thing, I have one question with Mr. Narayan also, and he's the largest dealer for excavators in India. There's a lot of talk regarding river linking projects, where you see the usage of machinery, large machineries, and we're talking about the excavators again getting used over there. So do you see that will again become one of the key, because that is very India-specific event that is happening when you're talking about a river linking project. What kind of impetus or growth driver this project can be for the industry?
So typically, I think one of the largest, so I think after mining, for example, and road construction, one of the biggest segments where excavators were being used was actually irrigation. We used to have large-scale projects that were actually digging irrigation canals across multiple states, primarily for agriculture. Similarly, we also feel that if there is a large-scale focus on interlinking of rivers, that could be a big impetus as far as the excavator industry is concerned. And that could also help us bring in a lot of large machines into the market, because I think the focus, like you said, of finishing projects early and also ensuring that productivity is high has made large contractors utilize large machines, run them across 2 or 3 shifts, and ensure that the productivity is at its highest, so that they are able to have the cost benefit when it comes to the P&L also. So we are seeing a migration both in terms of machines going towards the larger segments, and we are also seeing more specialization at the lower end. Like what we also heard, we are seeing more mini machines actually coming in. So we are seeing that they are going for specialized equipment that actually does that specific work. That's the reason why mini segment has also been growing recently.
Well, that's interesting, because we are hearing a lot of encouraging inputs. I think industry is still in wait and watch mode. Things have not moved the way, but the kind of capital outlay that will be required over there, that is going to be huge. And that could be one of the biggest key drivers for the industry, because that will be longer term projects, the visibility will be there. So when you talk about irrigation, you're talking about entering into the hinterland, getting things done. So my another question is Mr. Nawaz, because his machines are largely SLCA machines, which are going in the hinterland and getting all these things done when you're talking about the mechanization, labor scarcity. So again, when you're talking about specifically Mr. Nawaz, when we have discussed about roads, we have discussed about Swachh Bharat mission, but when you're talking about the rural demand, I think that is something which our participants will also be, want to hear from you. What kind of impetus you are seeing on the rural side? Because I think your machines are largely used in the rural segment where reaching out in those hinterland itself is difficult, and setting up a specific plant is also very difficult. So maybe what is your thought on the industry in the next 2 to 3 years down the line?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. If you look at on the rural side, government is investing a lot. Government is investing in terms of the roads in the villages and the water and Swachh Bharat projects. If you look at the self-loading concrete mixers, which are one of the key equipments which are used in the rural equipments, rural areas where they build the roads using them. And if you see, there is a continuous increase in the demand for these machines. The number of projects which are going on in the village segments, especially in the rural areas, are plenty-some. And if you see, the machines are deployed for making the canals in the on the outside side areas. And if you look at the village roads, and if you look at the projects which are of the track projects, so these projects are also there in that areas. So these self-loading concrete mixers are used there. They are specialized machines which can produce the concrete as well as deliver the concrete to the sites where it is required. And a similar way, the other smaller batching plants, smaller concrete pumps, and other small mixers are also used in these sites. So that's how it is happening there. And there is a continuous growth. We expect that the growth to continue in this segment. And slowly the other cities, smaller cities like tier 2, tier 3 cities are also going to move towards use of concrete machines, the machines which are mechanized machines compared to the conventional machines what are there today in the industry. So we see in the coming years, especially in this year, if you look at in this year, we see that there is going to be a huge demand, mainly because there will be a shift from CV4 to CV5 in the coming year. And in this year, in the end of end of the year, there will be a more demand, so that people would like to go for the machines which are cost-wise competitive, and also they have not tested the newer technology. So they will be going in for the pre-buy of these machines. And in the coming year, if you look at with the what you call a CV5 coming into picture, and the machines also becoming more automated, like for example, telematics coming in these machines. Surely I expect that there will be a huge demand in the coming couple of years time.
So could you touch on this emission norms related thing? So
Yeah.
my, again, is it, because when we talk about industry, such as whenever the emission norm changes, the cost also changes.
Correct.
Cost changes, it also have a repercussion on the project cost
Yes.
itself. When you talk about compare with the other two largest markets, let's say US and China, US is definitely ahead in terms of technology, in terms of emission norms.
Yeah.
But in terms of China, I think China is still on the older emission norms.
Yes.
And when we are on the higher, so is it really required? What is your take on that? On the sustainability side, or in terms of the cost effectiveness, are we going ahead on the emission norms, or is it a fair thing that we are following those norms?
See, actually, if you look at finally almost everywhere, all the countries have to follow the emission norms, which means that if not today, tomorrow they need to follow. And if you look at India is trying to be very close to the European norms. Like for example, in Europe it is Euro stage 5, and India in the CV segment also it's going to be in the tractor segment. We are going to follow stage 5, which is CV stage 5. So almost we are on par with the European and the American norms. I think this will give us advantage in terms of having the technology. And if you look at Indian companies, we are working on optimizing the whole solution. It means that the product total cost of ownership should not change. So that will be the key criteria. Yeah. So that's the key criteria, that the total cost of ownership is not changed. And we are trying to work on, even though there can be a cost implication, but the cost implication from CV4 to CV5 is not that very high, the way it was from the BS3 to CEV4. So I think that we trying to position ourselves with the higher emission norm should not be such a big criteria for us. Yes, for the industry, it's a challenge because we need to invest a lot in the research and development and to move from CEV4 to CEV5 in a very short period of time, which means that we could not completely recover the expenses what we had incurred in developing the CEV4 machines and then immediately going with the CEV5. But in the long term, if you see, we are readying ourselves to be as a global leaders in the construction equipment segment. And if you look at from the long-term perspective, I can say these machines are going to be more efficient, and also it will make the operators much comfortable to use because there are a lot of safety norms also coming along with the CEV5, mainly related to the noise level and also the electromagnetic compatibility, EMC side of it. So with these further improvements on the emission side of it and the safety side of it, I feel that they are going to be on the positive side for the industry. Indian players, almost most of the Indian players also have got connect with the global side of it, which means that there are many global players who are having their setups in India. And they can leverage that they manufacture in India and then export it, because now it's going to meet the requirements of the global top countries like Europe and US. I think it's going to be a win-win for us, for India. And from here onwards, the technologies are going to change and India can still be the leader there, whether it is going to be on the hydrogen side of it or the electrification side of it, and also on the AI and the other automation side of it. So almost we can say we are going to take a lead on that side, and it is going to assist actually in the further growth because more efficient processes, more efficient method means the growth also is going to be on a proper positive way that the outcome of the machines.
Nawaz, you are saying that basically the TCO is not getting compromised when you move into the emission norms. That's what you are saying.
Actually, in the TCO side of it also, the companies cannot completely burden the customer. So on the TCO side also, the companies are working on trying to bring down the weight of the machine, or looking at how they can increase the what you call as the warranty terms or the extended life intervals of hydraulic
maybe
coil.
my next question is on the similar line is Mr. Agnihotri. Mr. Agnihotri, what is your take on the total cost of ownership for the buyers when the emission norms are getting changed?
So actually, from my industry perspective, there are no emissions in such in excavator side. But as Mr. Nawaz has rightly said, because companies are supporting customers in this, looking at the long-term benefit of this change in emission and technology, because it gives us an opportunity to be on the global platform, and we can create. There are more opportunities for export, and we can gain more market share and utilization of the factory level. Because today, the one of the major challenge, if I can tell you, is the utilization of the capacity created. Now we have in excavator, the capacity could be around the demand currently is around 27,000, whereas the capacity is more than 60,000 or maybe 70,000. So this is one major challenge before the industry, how we can utilize this additional capacity. So this kind of changes in technology and emission also give us an opportunity to look at the globe and create a global market and use that kind of platform and supply to those global markets.
Mr. Shekhar, sir, when Mr. Agnihotri touched on the exports, you look after the multiple other geographies also. So what is your take on the cost competitiveness of India vis-a-vis China and let's say the other markets? Because when you're talking about de-risking strategy of various OEMs, almost all major OEMs who are there in India are largely global players. So there are no India specific. If you talk about statistics, I was just talking about their largest player, Caterpillar, is around $60 billion. The India's specific largest player is BML, which is $500 million. So there is a lot of gaps in terms of a lot of amount to catch up. So and the growth is largely outside. We're talking about global trade. So how do you see, and what are the sweet spot you see going forward, the key growth drivers for the Indian OEMs, how we can tap the international market and gain entry to it and grow sustainably?
So I think some of the previous questions were interlinked to this, right? A, the industry is maturing here in India, right? B, when we are talking about being at the same level as the global, platforms, right? Be it the emission norms, be it the use of telematics, be it the use of technology, right? AI. I think that all helps in basically India becoming a kind of a sweet spot for exports, right? A lot of multinational companies, without naming, I mean, they see India as a oasis of calm and stability, especially in the times when there's a lot of geopolitical issues happening across the world. There's US, China trade tensions, there is the Ukraine war, right? So India has emerged in the last couple of years' time as a very stable place wherein there has been, the government has done a good job in terms of bringing in the stability, in terms of the laws, the reforms, the ease of doing business. So I think the sweet spot for India and this industry, I think, is exports, right? We sit into a place wherein the cost of manufacturing is not very high, right? We have access to cheaper labor pool comparatively across from the world. The quality has improved significantly, right? Indian machines are now being seen as much more reliable than possibly the Chinese counterparts because of the longevity and in terms of the quality maintenance of the quality standards, right? People see it much more stable to kind of invest here in terms of, it's a long-term approach they are seeing. Obviously, there's a lot more to be done by not only the government, but in industry. So there's a lot of imports still happening. So as ICMA, which is the Construction Equipment Manufacturers Association, we are engaged with the government to bring in the PLI scheme, right, for the construction equipment industry. So which will help in a lot of localization, because right now, a lot of imports are happening for components which we are not able to produce either in the volume or of the quality which is required. So overall, I think, we are in the right place in terms when it comes to exports, right? Cheaper raw steel, a lot of raw material procured locally, cheaper labor. I think there's no lack of engineering skills, right? In terms of the manpower, a lot of the businesses globally are struggling with people, right? You don't find you are importing people from India, Ireland, right? If you talk about Australia, there's nobody to be hired, right? You can't get any person in the factories in Europe. After Brexit, especially in the UK and all the people, all the Europeans have left, all the Eastern Europeans have left, so there's a huge dearth of labor. So I think this is the time where India can actually, capitalize on that, right? But one thing which we need to be very clear is that, quality is going to be paramount, right? Global markets, they expect the quality to be coming out, right? They don't expect, unstable quality. India's rise as I'll say, a geopolitical power, it all adds up, right? When I used to go and try to kind of meet a customer or a dealer 10 years back coming from India trying to sell Indian products, the kind of welcome I used to get or the kind of importance I used to get is much more different than which you go get it today. They take you at par. I mean, they're not going to kind of demean you and say, oh, it's coming from India, I'll pay less. I think India is at the same standard in most of the markets, right? A lot of the global MNCs have done a good job in making sure that they have quality is same. So there's no talk about it's coming out of India, or it's coming out of China. It's just like Apple phone. It's an Apple phone. It doesn't matter where it comes from. So that's how most of the companies have started talking about that. Is our product you don't need to worry about which factory it is coming from. And I think that is where we have capitalized well. That is probably the sweet spot for us, right? The next 5 to 10 years, it can be very well growth, right? And the key thing which we have talked about, and I agree with other people, that the market, we have to be on the same lines. You cannot have India's standard product being manufactured in the same factory and the global manufacturer product. So again, if I talk about my factory, I don't know which product is going to be built in India, going to India or going to go outside India, because we build it of the same quality and the standard. So if India becomes a manufacturing hub, what will also happen that some of the places wherein the manufacturers are kind of trying to cut corners, not everybody in saying, okay, this goes to India, that will also go away, because, you have to basically, for a lean manufacturing, for a efficient manufacturing, you can't have two different lines, two different quality standards, two different BOM of material, right? So that is where I think we will be heading into.
Now, if I ask you very brief input, which product segment you can see that India will become a key exporter? So which will be those according to you?
And I see it across the CE industry. I mean, I see it. I see probably the backhoe loaders. India will be the biggest exporter, right? Across globally. Excavators. A lot, as he said, like there's a lot of spare capacity. There's a lot of business. Excavators are going out. So I would say cutting across. I don't see it as a product specific. It is across, right? A lot of companies, and that change has happened in the last 3-4 years time. A lot of companies have now started asking their distributors globally to come to see India, to see the factories and pick up machines from here. So I say it is cutting across the construction equipment industry because it's the same thing. I mean, you build excavator, backhoe loader, crusher, or a crane. If the cost of manufacturing is lower and you have the right quality, people are ready to buy from India, right? So I don't see any particular product in that, that is going to be the leader in the exports.
And which are the target market that you see for exports?
Yeah, so I mean, if I talk about we started with Asia, Middle East and all, wherein the acceptability was better in the beginning days. But right now, I mean, we export all the way back to the US, right? We build tier 5 machines in India, we ship it out, we build tier 4, we ship it out, right? And it's just, we are not alone. A lot of the companies are now shipping back machines all the way to the US. So this all changes happened in the last 3 to 4 years time because, yeah, it is a little bit painful, right? When you have a tier 5 model to be built in India, you need to import the fuel for testing because, you need to test it, you need to store it separately. But things are getting easier. The only one big thing which I believe is a roadblock in this whole thing is going to be the shipping, right? Our ports, our shipping lines, our shipping routes are still not developed, right? So we struggle a lot of times in having machines sitting in our factory or at the port and we don't have enough ships to carry, or you have one ship a month, right? Especially when you're talking about the roll-on, roll-off vehicles, vessels, they are probably once a month, right? So that doesn't help, right? So I think what can possibly, increase the exports is the shipping, right? If we can have more ports and more shipping lines being interested in picking up machines from India, that is where I think we are lagging behind.
I think the government has listened to you, and they have a lot of focus on the ports in the recent years. So there is definitely sequential improvement. I think a lot more to be done over there. But again, when you talk about imports on shipping related thing, because Mr. Agnihotri, you also import a lot of components from Korea for your machineries, and you are also looking at the international business from in your company. So how do you see the logistics issues? And like to add anything on, Mr. Shekhar?
I totally agree with Mr. Shekhar on this. The export, I would like to tell the industry, this construction equipment industry, we are exporting to more than 100 countries from India. So as an industry, some of the other product is going to other countries. The biggest challenge today we are facing is the logistics only because some routes vessels are available only once in a month, some routes not available, and there could be some kind of transshipment. So we need to create those kind of maybe the ports with the capability to handle the large vessels and the frequency to key markets. From Hyundai perspective, I can tell you we have welcomed the customers from Saudi Arabia, we are welcoming customers from Africa, we are welcoming customers from Asian market. So we are welcoming customers from many countries, more than 40 countries we are exporting from this factory. And as I told you earlier, we are exploring to increase the utilization of the capacity available with us. And that is how we are collaborating with our parent companies in China, parent company in Korea, how we can create some kind of sustainable model and serve the demand in other countries.
So when you talk about the costing in India versus your other global counterpart, you are saying that it's more or less in line with the overseas market, or it's slightly higher in India vis-a-vis the international market?
See, Indian manufacturing, I would say it is very cost effective. We have, I mean, if I compare my manufacturing cost with the Korea manufacturing cost, we are very cost effective in India. The only challenge today is we have to import more than 50% material. So that is where we are, I mean, prone to that kind of dollar fluctuation and ocean freight from other countries. So that is how, as an industry, we are working towards how we can reduce this dependence on import. 50% localization we have already achieved, around 50% across the value chain. In some product we have 60%, some product we have maybe 40%. So this is a big challenge where we can we are working towards, and where we are demanding, support from the government, that PLI could be one area where one scheme for the industry, where the manufacturers can be motivated to invest into R&D, to invest into, because our growth is good, but the base is not very high. Then setting up the kind of component, hydraulic pump assembly, control valve assembly, it costs a lot of money, and that kind of ROI is not maybe we justify to the companies. So that is why we want some kind of support from the government, that okay, PLI, and then we can put a lot of investment here in R&D, in setting up new plant, and create that kind of component assemblies in India.
Thank you, Mr. Agnihotri. No, I will be coming back to the Indian market again. And my next question is Mr. Narayan. I think he is the one who is very closely associated with the customer over here. So my question to Mr. Narayan is, what is the issue, or what are the challenges you are seeing at a ground level? What is impacting in terms of, let's say, when a customer comes for buying? What are the challenges that you see for that customer? And also, what challenges you are looking at from the financier side, which is constraining this growth?
So one of the things that we've seen happen over the last few years is there's been a huge impetus from the central government in terms of pushing large-scale projects. However, at the same time, we've also seen there have been multiple challenges at the state level to actually getting state-level projects run. Multiple reasons for that. A lot of the way we've actually given out social schemes is actually impacting this. Giving budgets to key departments is actually having an impact. So if you actually look at from a contractor's perspective, cash flows continue to be a major issue with most contractors that are dealing with projects outside of roads today. So that is a major challenge that they're facing. The second thing, if you actually look at from the total cost of ownership that we've actually talked about multiple times, I think contractors are trying to sweat out their assets for much longer than they used to earlier, because the cost of assets over the last few years has increased significantly also. And with upcoming norms of going into CE5, for example, I think that will continue to increase, and we'll have to ensure that these assets can be utilized for a longer period of time. And that's where things like advanced telematics, video telematics, these kind of things will actually come in, because the entrepreneurs and the contractors of today, which are the next generation of contractors, they want to have better visibility into what's happening with their assets, how it's being utilized, how safe they are actually being, are they complying with the laws that have actually been implemented. And especially in mining, for example, there are very, very stringent conditions within which machines need to be operated. If you actually go back to the financing side, I think, again, our customers are actually looking for more innovative solutions that they can actually deploy. So in terms of solutions, one is a plain vanilla leasing option that can actually be implemented. But if you look at the financing options, there are very, very limited financiers that are offering leasing as an option to the customers. The second is customers are also looking for rental options from OEMs. So I think if you look at the global market, the rental market is a very, very large market. OEMs, give the machines for rental. They take care of the maintenance for X number of years, and then they take it back, and either they re-rent it or they sell it to somebody else. So that's another option that more customers are actually asking for, because these kind of solutions will reduce the debt on their books, and they can actually be less leveraged as far as the industry is concerned. And then the last thing is, again, the technology. I think they want to be, so one of the other things we are also seeing is there is more interest from our customers for electrification, for example. We are seeing a couple of sites where they've actually deployed electric tippers. So if tippers can be electrified, the big advantage that these customers see is in construction equipment sites, you have the assets that are basically, just operating within a particular period of time, which is the biggest particular distance, which is the biggest issue as far as electrification is concerned. So if that problem can be resolved, I think implementing an electrification solution becomes a lot more easier. But again, like you mentioned earlier in the discussion, total cost of ownership will actually come into play. So we'll have to be innovative. We'll have to come up with local solutions. It would also be interesting to see more, collaboration between startups of today and the large OEMs in the construction machinery space to come out with innovative solutions that can be deployed in very, very Indian solutions, and things that we can actually take out to a global market very soon.
one interesting thing on telematics. So how can telematics help financiers over here? Because someone is working in a hinterland, repossessing that machine from that particular hinterland is an issue. And that actually deters financiers in financing construction equipment. So how do you see telematics can help in solving this issue? Because this is one of the key and perennial issues for the financiers. So how do you see, any comment on that?
I think the basic, if you look at telematics, is that you can global positioning system is what we typically link telematics to, but telematics goes to a lot more detail than that. I think GPS is just a very it's a base layer as far as telematics is concerned. Telematics can also give you data on how many hours a machine has worked, how efficiently it's worked, what is the utilization versus what was originally planned for that machine. Where is the machine actually operating? All this information is currently available with most of the OEMs, with the dealers, and with the customer. Now, as far as financials are concerned, currently legally we are not allowed to give this information out to the financiers, but if the financiers want this information either from an OEM or from a dealer, this information is currently available with most of the machines that are being deployed in the market. So this can actually help them understand if the collection's gone down and the customer is actually saying that he's not utilizing the machine. This can clarify that kind of a data. It can also give them information on where the machine is operating. So it should give them a level of comfort that's higher than what they are seeing today. And from an industry perspective, this could be a representation that they're actually making to the central government, saying this is data that they should be privy to in terms of not all the data about the machine, but specific pieces of information that can be shared with them on a regular basis, which would give them more of a comfort level to lend to equipment in this particular segment also.
This is something which is also insightful for me. Now, again, taking this telematic related thing to Mr. Nawaz, since, sir, your machines are largely used in the rural and hinterland. Correct. So how can telematics can help you in addressing some of these challenges which financiers are facing?
Yeah, actually, if you look at telematics, even today in India, it is not full-fledged used. It's, you can say, sparingly used. But in the time to come, it's going to be one of the key factor for all the machines, mainly because if you look at, if a fleet owner has got 10 to 20 machines, and if he wants to deploy them at different sites and the sites are remote, he can control that by use of telematics. He can position each of the machine and even ask the operators to move the machine from one location to the other location if the project is on hold, or if there are some other issues. Like, for example, if there is non-availability of certain material, say for example sand is not there and he has to get the sand, but he has the other site where say a kilometer or two away from it, he can move that to the other side. One is he can operate the machines effectively by planning these machines if the jobs are not available at particular site. Second thing is he can also ask for the service side of it. For example, if he says that there are machines which are having some minor problems, then immediately we can take on from the company side and we can get into the machine. What is the problem? We can check with the operator and we can diagnose it if it's possible. Especially now with the electronic engines, it is slightly easier because the moment we come to know of a error code, we try to tell him that this error code, you can neglect it, not a problem, you can continue with it, or we can tell him that please check whether the AdBlue is proper, the quality of AdBlue may not be proper, so you just change the AdBlue, try to use the right quality AdBlue. So that also we can inform, and also we can give to the owners, for example, if there are certain thefts which are happening in rural sites, which they do not come to know if there is a diesel theft. So automatically the owner can get a information if there is a sudden drop in the fuel quantity level, he gets a message that there is something gone wrong and there is a drop in the fuel quantity. So that's how it can help the customers who are placing their machines in challenging places where the access is limited, especially in the rural areas.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
So my next question is with Mr. Agnihotri. We have briefly touched on electrification over here. So what is your take on electrification of machine on the construction equipment side? Because the cost is expected to go up. but fuel-related issues, emission-related issues will be taken care of when we move electric. So what is your take on this, especially on the smaller machines when we say that can be electrified and which moves in a particular small territory and where it's feasible also. So what is your take on the overall cost of ownership over there and electrification in the industry going forward?
See, as an industry, we are working very closely with the power sourcing, manufacturers and devices for the sustainability and green fuel and all. We had a conference of conference on the biofuel for the construction equipment industry. Some of our friends, they have also developed. In fact, Hyundai also developed a mini excavator with the collaboration with Cummins on the hydrogen cells. Wheel loader is developed. Electric wheel loader is also developed. Now it is the question of commercialization, and maybe creating the ecosystem at the site. The question is, the creating the ecosystem at the mines where we are actually, our machines are working for the development of the infrastructure, and we need some kind of ecosystem there at the site so that these electric machines can work there, and the kind of availability guarantee can be given to the customer. So I think it will take some time, but the work is happening on this in this direction, not only on the electrification but on the alternate fuel side also. So we are discussing with our engine partners, can we use biofuel or ethanol or those kind of activities, so that the dependence on the diesel can be reduced, and the TCO can be improved for the customer.
So one question to the panel here is, when we talk about the major players in India, we see all the major players are largely subsidiaries or joint venture of the international entities. What can be done to make or have at least one or two Indian OEMs in the global top 5 or top 10? Mr. Riyaz, over to you.
If you look at Ajax started long ago in 1992. It started with a partnership with a company called Fiori, and it was the first company to bring the self-loading concrete mixer. Those days, it was thought that such a solution will not work, but the management was of the opinion that it is surely bound to happen, that India is going to move towards it. And today, Ajax is a global leader in self-loading concrete mixer. The volume what we manufacture, the next player or the global player who is after this is about 1/10 of our size in the volume. So that's the position we have. And the self-loading concrete mixer, for example, from Ajax side of it, it is sold in more than 30 countries, and almost everywhere where it is sold, whether it is in the Middle East, in Egypt, or in African countries like in Nigeria, or in Asia Pacific countries like Philippines, almost everywhere, wherever it's sold, it's working well. So it is a first step for an Indian company to what you call as be a global player. And then comes on the next thing is a concrete slip-form paver. Concrete slip-form paver is to make concrete roads. Ajax is the only Indian company, and I think the 6th company in the whole world. There are only 5 other companies which make these concrete slip-form pavers, and Ajax is one of them. And now the machines are going outside India. We are exporting the machines for the concrete slip-form paver. Then it comes to the concrete batching plants. Ajax is an Indian company which has the complete portfolio of batching plants, starting from 20 cubic meter batching plant up to 120 cubic meter batching plant, with both the twin shaft mixer technology as well as the planetary mixer technology. And we are becoming quite strong in both India and as well as the global side of it, including UAE and other countries we have established it.
Sure, Mr. Nawaz.
So, yeah. So in one way, we are trying to work on this side, and also on the newer technologies which are coming, we are trying to venture into that.
Mr.
So as
Shekhar, yeah.
Ajax, Indian company which we are trying to pitch in globally, and we would also like to say that the research and development team is continuously expanding to see that we
Sir,
also
Mr. Nawaz,
are...
I'm
yeah.
just taking that question to Mr. Shekhar now. So, sir, you talk regarding PLI, we're talking about the vendor ecosystem over here. So if you see these challenges getting addressed in the next 5 years, do you see the Indian OEMs will also becoming a formidable player because the manufacturing base ecosystem will be here and we will become a formidable player? Some of, if not today, maybe few years down the line, some Indian OEMs will be the formidable player in the construction equipment space?
100%. I mean, even in categories of the CE equipment industry today also, I mean, there are formidable players, right? You know, and I think there's a lot of innovation happening. I mean, obviously, I come from I represent a company which is a multinational company, but again, I have seen a lot of Indian companies doing very well in this industry. You know, be it the crane segment, I mean, they name some companies who are very strong. I mean, you just heard from Ajax on the concrete side. On the asphalt side, there are companies that are doing very well. They're exporting out. So I think, you know, India has built a good name. Whatever, you know, benefits the subsidiaries are getting in India in terms of the lower cost and access to the talent pool and the cheaper labor, even the Indian companies are doing. And I will say that a lot of these companies are very innovative. And I see it a very strong future, right, you know, for both the subsidiaries as well as the Indian companies, because everybody's investing in innovation. And I think one thing which is also going to help us is that the market is maturing, right? You know, the market, the customers are maturing. Earlier, it used to be one bottleneck because you want to bring in the technology. The customers didn't want to pay for it, right? You know, the customers didn't want the extra safety features. The customer didn't want to pay for telematics, right? You know, the customer was just looking at the lowest cost of, you know, basically purchasing. Now things have changed, right? You know, so that
in the industry.
So just picking up on what they were actually talking about, you know, I think while a lot of players in India are global, I think they've got a very, very strong Indian DNA. I think if you look at the products they've brought into market, the way they've worked with the customers and the history of these multinationals in India, I think they've been working in India for a very, very long time. What I would like to see is that what happened with 7-Eleven once. I think 7-Eleven is a global retailer. At one point of time, 7-Eleven Japan actually bought out 7-Eleven globally. So the Japanese business had grown to an extent where they could actually buy out the global operation. I'd like to see the same thing happen in India. I'd like to see some of the global players in India actually growing to an extent where they can actually buy out the international operations because of the strength, the kind of innovation they're actually bringing to market, and the kind of ecosystem that we have in place. At the end of the day, we are the country that has landed the 4th rover on the moon, right? So I think we have a lot going for us. I think the momentum is excellent, and I think the R&D capability that's available here in India today is unmatched in the world. I think a lot of these global players, for example, Volvo, they have very, very large R&D centers that are based out of multiple locations in India: Bangalore, Pune, Gurgaon. So I think the overall things look good for the industry. The timing is right. I'm also very pro on change in technology. I think change in technology actually drives a lot of innovation. We see a lot of changes happening with that. The confidence level of the players actually improves significantly. And we actually make products that can be used anywhere in the world, not just in the Middle East or Africa, but anywhere in the world. That's what we need to see in the future, and that's where we are. And I think the government is also putting everything in place for this to make this a reality. So with the kind of things that the OEM is doing, the ICEMA is doing, the government is doing, and the changes that are happening macroeconomically, I think we've set the stage for having a very, very good next 10 years for this industry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for closing the session on a very, very positive note. I think one thing is very, very clear. We are going to grow in a double digit in the Indian market, and the export will be even higher. So you can assume that what kind of growth that will be there for the overall industry. And when you talk about the cost localization, or basically the import content going down, it is a lot of opportunities are available for the vendors over there. That's again another encouraging trend that will be there. So India is there to stay, and we are going to see the share of India going forward. And what Mr. Narayan also very rightly said, if we are there, the only country in the world to be on the moon, on the South Pole, I think there is no doubt regarding the Indian talent and the R&D capabilities, and definitely we will be going to be one of the, we'll see some of the Indian entities becoming the top players in the construction equipment space. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Check. So in case anybody has any question, please raise your hands.
Thank you, panelists, for the interesting session. My name is Kunal Sharma. I'm from Tiliv International LLP. We are in consultancy for marketing, business development, sourcing, and SCM. I think one of the questions that I got hitched upon is, we spoke about electrification. Which technology do you think in this industry is actually winning the race with respect to maybe proof of concept or inquiries from users, whether it's hydrogen as fuel or BEV? So, Mr. Jaydeep or Mr.
So I think, from an industry point of view, the two alternative fuels were in battery powered, right? And the hydrogen as a proof of concept is where some of the manufacturers are already working on, right? Ethanol based mixing, right? That biodiesel is, I think that is probably going to win the race, right? Because there's a lot of focus from the government also in terms of the, I think 5% is going to be mandatory by 2025 and then going up to 30%. So some of the engine manufacturers are already working on up to 30%, biodiesel. But again, because this industry is so vast, right? So what will be successful in, say, a mini excavator will not be successful in a crushing plant, right? So there's a huge range. So I think when this whole thing settles down, you will have smaller machines, possibly battery, powered, right? Larger machines, possibly, biodiesel, electrification. As I said, tippers, electrification, biodiesel, but probably battery powered, and electrification. So there's going to be a whole range of machines with different kinds of alternative fuels or power. I don't think so there's going to be, for this industry, from where we are seeing currently, given the size and the scale and the duty cycles, right? Giving you an example, right? On a crane, it's probably easy to have a battery powered, power source, because a crane is not, a pick and carry crane is not always probably lifting, right? It is lifting, then stays there for half an hour, then lifts again. You talk about a crusher, it runs at a stretch for 12 hours, right? So there's different ways of machines being operated, different sizes, right? And that's why it will ultimately end up. Again, if you're talking about a smaller machine, you want to have very smaller battery, right? Because of the space. You're talking about a very large machine, the battery can be used as a counterweight, right? Because you don't have any problem with the space or the weight, right? So I think we are very early stages. The proof of concept is being worked on the battery powered and the hydrogen fuel cells. There's a lot of focus in India, but there's biodiesel happening, there's electrification happening, hybrid technology coming, everything is happening across all the machine models.
Thank you.
I believe we have one more question there.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the excellent discussions we had. A lot of great inputs for me. I'm Santosh Jarwar, having spent more than 40 years in the earth-moving industry with brands like Hitachi, Stanford, Samsung, Volvo, and lastly, Kobelco. Presently, I'm retired. We talked about export. Well, knowing some of the OEMs who are overseas principals, generally they put some restrictions on what an Indian subsidiary can or where they can sell. That is the one part which I'm sure things are changing, because they are seeing a brand for made in India excavators or products like that. Now, in our zeal to export, one thing I feel that we need to work is make sure that the machines not only get sold, but they are supported properly in the respective countries. And for that, probably a collaborative approach is going to be more viable for everybody, maybe under umbrella of Government of India or ICMA, I don't know, something needs to be worked out, so that we have centers there where multi-brand support is available to the customer in terms of parts, service, even training for operators and mechanics, so that the whole ecosystem develops in that country for the made in India product. That's something I wanted to share. Thank you.
I'll probably answer this, right? When we are talking about exports from India, we are not competing with our counterparts globally. We are exporting it out to our intercompanies, who then distribute it. So India is being used as a manufacturing hub, but we are not being used as a manufacturing hub in competition to the factories which are present globally. It is basically substituting and in some places aiding the supply. So most of the global manufacturers will be basically shipping it out to their intercompany partners, right, through the distributors. And there is no restriction per se, right, So every company's policy will be different, but it is all done with the overall support. And so the distributors in those countries will take care of the products. And again, most of the global MNCs will not have a, India machines will not have a different training requirement or a different parts requirement, right, or different technology into it. It will be at par with anything which is going out of the European factories or the American factories. So there's no separate training or a separate parts requirement for the distributors to be kept that, okay, I have 5 machines from the UK factory and 5 machines from the India factory, I need to store parts for both of them. That doesn't work. So it has to, Indian machines has to be at par with the global supply chain, right, then it is going to work.
Maybe to add to your question, sir, nowadays what is happening, this skill development, the technology is available with us is so good that we can even offer maybe technical training and troubleshoot sitting in India itself. Maybe we have kind of 3D camera and go on the machine and you can do that. In my company, I can tell you, we have been giving this technical support to customers working in Ivory Coast or maybe some kind of remote countries in Africa, where the technical person sitting in Pune and he can guide the technical manager there. Okay, what could be the kind of how you can open it, how you can do that kind of thing, and maybe for the kind of equipment we have, maybe excavator, backhoe loader, there could be a different kind of technical requirements there. But generally, as Mr. Jaideep said, it is between the group companies how to distribute that. We normally have distributor in every country, and they are capable enough to support those kind of equipment wherever we are selling.
Thank you so much. I hope it helped. All right, so thank you so much. We appreciate your guidance. Can we have a round of applause for everybody? Come on.